Welcome back to part two of our NBA draft preview. We started with the first 10 prospects of ESPN's Not Top 10. And now we are going to go through prospects 11 through 20 on their list and go into a little bit of detail on what we think about them. We'll talk more about what we think for the future for these prospects once they get drafted. A lot of these prospects depend on fit. I think that's every year. So we'll just talk high level here and then get into more detail once the draft happens and they land in on a team that we can further evaluate. So Zach, you want to run through the 11 through 20?
Yeah, we'll go one at a time. So first one's Devin Vassell, number 11, shooting guard from Florida State, 6'5". Another, like we talked about in the last podcast, Florida State players are usually drafted on potential because we don't see a ton of them in college just because they play so many people. Vassell fits that mold again. I think people are looking at him as like a 3-and-D kind of player. He's a pretty good shooter. I think he's more of a streaky shooter than necessarily a good shooter. So he might be a little overrated in that aspect. But he's very long and very athletic, which will make him a good defender, hopefully. And I think he has enough tools to have a solid foundation and to be able to get a lot better in his early career at the NBA level. But I think he'll be an instant impact player for sure. I just think 11's a little bit too high for him.
Yeah, no, I agree. 11 feels high, especially after the workout video was released and then since deleted of his new shooting form. He already shoots it pretty far back behind his head, which can cause inconsistencies. Although he shot 42% from three on his career, basically shot 42% both years. Doesn't shoot a high volume of them, just like any Florida State player, not going to have a high volume of anything. Took a lot of open threes. So I think that's going to take a bit of a dip in the NBA. And with that form, like we were talking about, it's getting pretty far back behind his head. It causes misses to either go left or right because it's hard to control that. More of a soccer throw-in type shot. So when you first look at him, I think in an easy, lazy comparison is Mikal Bridges. Long arms, 6'7", plays well on defense, smart player. Never going to try to do too much. He, like you said, he's going to be an instant impact kind of guy. But yeah, I think at 11, it's a little too high for me. I think he's absolutely in this range, but I don't think he's the first out of this 10.
Yeah, he's definitely late lottery to just outside the lottery for me. But also, just to give you another number on what we just said, he's a 72% career free throw shooter. So for someone that's supposed to be considered somewhat of a shooter, that's a little scary, I think, and definitely shows that he probably needs some, at least a little bit rebuilding on his shot. So number 12 is Precious Achua from Memphis, probably Penny Hardaway's best player last year. I believe he definitely won Player of the Year in the AAC, and he definitely won something else, but I'm blanking on it for some reason, which is good for the guy that's going to run the college basketball podcast. But anyways, he's pretty long. He's talented with the ball in his hands. He's one of the modern day four, so to speak. Can get the rebound, bring the ball up, and try to make a play for somebody else. With that being said, he also is a little bit turnover prone with that and doesn't necessarily make the best decisions. So while he does have those skill set to be like a ball handler, you probably don't want the ball in his hands that often, at least yet. But you can see sort of like Bam, like he had that foundation where he can at least be comfortable with the ball in his hands. And now Bam's obviously built on that and become a great playmaker and really good with the ball in his hands. So there's room for Precious to grow there. He showed some glimpses as a shooter. For me, he's a little too streaky for my liking. Much better in the paint and around the rim using his length and athleticism. So if he wants to have a bigger impact in the NBA, he definitely needs to develop his jumper a little bit more.
Yeah. Speaking to the jumper, I think he's initially more of a corner three, once, maybe twice a game, maybe once or twice a game, pick and pop, hit the top of the key three. other than that, I don't want him shooting too much. But yeah, like you said, he's really good in transition. I think he's best when he gets rebound goes and gets it at his hands early. Um, he can push the ball, put pressure on the defense, but he's at his best when he gets it to about half court, pushes it up to a guard where he can get it right back and finish around the rim. Um, he's probably the best rim runner next to his teammate James Wiseman as far as it goes offensively. And then defensively, he has a ton of potential. You can see he's had multiple efforts where he guards the screen, gets switched off to a guard, guards the guard, and swings it, and then helps back to his man, able to kind of guard the ball and help side as well. So he's got a lot of defensive potential. Rim protection's there, and I think he's a little too low for me, being at 12. I think he definitely should be in the top 10, and depending on fit, I think he can have a Bam-like career arc. Not saying that they're similar players, but I think he can have that type of impact if he goes to the right place.
Yeah, the word really to describe him is just raw. And I know we kind of use that as a negative for some people in the top 10. But for Precious, I feel like he already has a decent foundation of like, for me, there's a clear trajectory of how good he can be and like what he can improve on. And he already has the bottom level skills of those things. So you can see if he gets in a good system with a good coach and staff that he'll just improve probably astronomically. So number 13 is Aaron Nesmith from Vanderbilt, 6'8" small forward, really can shoot it, really can score. Didn't get to see a ton of him in college just because, first of all, Vanderbilt stinks and is not exactly in the best situation. But he's also missed some games. But he's a very good scorer. He can shoot, can score from pretty much all levels, and it is pretty crafty with the way he scores. He's also gotten a lot of praise for his character at Vanderbilt, which I think is something to always take into account for a lot of these guys, especially younger players, when they can take on leadership roles and be impressive like that on the floor and off the floor initially is awesome. But we don't know a ton about him. We haven't seen him a ton at the college level. He had a stress fracture in his foot that caused him to miss some games, and so that always leaves a lot of questions when you really only see a guy play high school basketball, because high school basketball across the country is either really good or really bad, or usually not much in between. But for sure, he's a guy that can score and will bring impact on the offensive side. And then he has all the tools to be a good defender as well.
Yeah, but I think he's still a little bit has room to grow on the defensive end. Like you said, he's got the tools. He's got size. I think he's listed at like 6'6",
Yep.
6'7", something
He's probably
around there. Yeah. And so he definitely has that ability to kind of play that two guard in the NBA, maybe play some three depending on who's around him. But he's definitely a pure shooter. I think he's got great form. When you look at his highlights, almost every make is a swish. Every miss is either back rim or front rim. It's the sign of a really good shooter. Their control of the ball. So I think he will find his way on the court right away for whatever team he plays for, just because of his ability to shoot the ball and not being a negative on defense. So that being said, I think his ceiling is limited. I don't see a path to All-Star or All-NBA, anything like that. I just see not necessarily a journeyman, but someone who's makes an impact on every team he plays. Every team he plays for, I see him always kind of on a playoff team, just because his skills are what playoff teams need, and he's never going to demand a huge salary. So just feels like that's the type of career he's going to have. He'll be in the league for a long time. But yeah, I mean, I like him as just a role player right away. I think, again, 13 is a little high for me. But if you're getting someone that can impact your team right away, 13 is fine.
And I did say Vanderbilt stinks, and that is true, but he did have Jerry Stackhouse as his coach, and that's someone that he could definitely try to model his NBA career after, and I'm sure he got a lot of good tidbits all in college with that. So number 14 is RJ Hampton. I'm not going to say a single word about it. And Michael, it's your stage.
So RJ Hampton, I think, came into this college season, or this past basketball season, as thought of as, I think, consensus top 10, top 5 type player. Went to Australia before going to college, kind of on a similar path as Terrence Ferguson, Emmanuel Mudiay, some guys that went overseas first. And I do think that hurt his draft stock, just because when you're playing in an established professional league, it's hard to get playing time as an 18-year-old, especially when you're still developing physically. Especially Australia. Australia is a very physical league. Everyone is in the weight room constantly. It's a very, very physical league. With all that being said, I think he's one of the best players in the draft. He will walk into the league as one of the top 10, 15 most athletic guys in the league. That gives him an advantage right away. In the off season, he's put on a ton of weight with muscle, which is something he really needed to do, and it was very apparent in Australia. But he's a nightmare in transition. He can get rim to rim in 2 or 3 bounces in a blink of an eye. He can finish at the rim with either hand. He has really good shooting form. Besides his base, he shoots with his feet are kind of narrow. I think that's just with the narrow frame. If you can get that a little bit wider, get a little bit more on balance on most of his shot's going to improve like crazy. He's got some way to go with decision making, but I think overall he's just going to have a huge impact on the league. He may start slow, and that's to be expected with someone that's an athlete still defining their role. But ultimately, I think he can be one of the guys out of this draft that can go all NBA. And he has all the tools on defense: quick feet, good hands. Just has to lock in mentally, and I think he's there.
All right, I got a question for you.
What's up?
He's kind of close to another RJ that I like. What do you think about that?
Jay Barrett?
Yeah. There's similarities. I don't think they're obviously like Hampton's, I think, more athletic, but I think like how good they are in open space, and that they like, remember how I showed you how RJ Barrett finished like the most ridiculous shots when we went to those games, and how he just like controls his body ridiculously well. I think Hampton can get better in that aspect, but I think they both play really well on the open floor and are like I don't think they're thought of as playmakers, but I think they're a lot better playmakers than they are thought of.
For sure. I think RJ Barrett's a little bit further along in playmaking. He's a little bit craftier around the rim. I think that's just because RJ Hampton's always been able to get to the rim pretty easily. RJ Barrett he played in the NBA, he's played at Duke, he's played against guys that are more athletic than he is, and he's had to kind of develop a craftiness around the rim. But yeah, I do think both of them are very good playmakers. RJ Barrett, I think, is going to have a big year coming up. As long as the Knicks put NBA talent around him, unlike what they normally do. But if he's able to get some shooters around him and have Mitchell Robinson healthy for the year, his playmaking ability is right there. But yeah, I do see some similarities. I just think RJ Hampton relies a little bit more on athleticism to make his plays. RJ Barrett is craftier, has a little bit higher IQ when it comes to playmaking, but he can absolutely get there.
It's nice to hear you talk about RJ Barrett like that. All right. So number 15, Tyrese Maxey, combo guard from Kentucky. In my opinion, Kentucky's best player last year. He is one of my I don't like Kentucky in college, and I always end up picking Kentucky players for like people I think are really good in the draft, and I don't like it necessarily, but I guess it should mean a little something. I think he's very athletic, very versatile. For me, he kind of plays like a Lou Williams, where I think he's best coming off the bench and being that 6-man role where he just gets buckets all the time. I'm not crazy about him playmaking wise for other people. For himself, for sure, I think he's a really good pick and roll player where he can attack defenses and make some crafty shots around the rim and pick and pop. pick and roll, everything. I think he's going to have a pretty big impact initially, just because I think he's a pretty naturally gifted scorer, and I don't think he'll struggle too much in that aspect. But like defensively and turnovers and stuff, I could see him struggling a little bit early on, at least.
Yeah, the playmaking ability he has a long way to go. He fully recognizes that. He's is something that the reason I'm high on him is because of his awareness of his game. A lot of players don't truly understand their weaknesses and how to attack them. He really studies the game, watches different film on different guys. I mean, he's watching film on guys from Ja Morant to Steve Nash. I mean, kind of the whole range of them, types of players that he can model his game after. So I think he's the guy that gets in the gym and works. So he's going to be successful. But yeah, playmaking is definitely the biggest weakness, I think, offensively for him. His shot is a little low for me. He kind of starts it from under his chin and doesn't get much higher, which will cause him to have to shoot from further away to get a shot off, which he looked like he could do. He did pretty well in college. I think he's shooting around 35% from three. But just a concern to consistently be able to get your shot off when you have a low release, especially only being about 6'3", and likely going to be guarded by two or three guards. So I think just his work ethic is going to make him successful, but he definitely has some concerns. I would definitely bump him up. I think I would bump him up into the top 10, just because you know what you're going to get. He's a worker for sure. So yeah, I mean, I really like Tyrese. Just will be interested to see where he goes.
I think there's something to be said for people that are instinctive offensively, where like you don't necessarily have to worry about where they're going to get their shots from. I think players that can just have a feel on the offensive end and create their own shots are important in the NBA. And I feel like Maxey fits that role, at least initially, and I think he can only get better there. So number 16 is Cole Anthony. Point guard.
Wait. Before we move on. Quick question.
Yeah.
So I think also with last year's Kentucky team having Emmanuel Quickley and Ashton Higgins and having blanket. Who else were their guards?
You got him.
But okay, I was trying to think of someone else. But having two other ball dominant type guards that are smaller, I think also impacted him. Not having his playmaking opportunities all typically came from transition, and when he gets downhill, he gets tunnel vision. So do you think that impacted his playmaking ability? And you think that'll change in the NBA?
Yeah, but so for me, Kentucky, I think Calipari wanted Ashton Higgins to be the guy, and he didn't really work out to be the guy. And that resulted in Ashton Higgins having the ball in his hands for 25 seconds in the shot clock and then saying, oh, crap, and throwing it to Tyrese Maxey and hoping that something good happened. So obviously, in those situations, low on the shot clock, you don't really have a chance to make plays for anyone other than yourself for the most part. And I feel like I still don't think he's a very good playmaker. I still think he's a slightly below average playmaker, but Bam Adebayo didn't make any plays in college either, and now he's in year, 3, and it was a fantastic playmaker. So Kentucky's difficult because they have so many players, and they have to find a way to make those players come together as a team, and you got to find roles, and sometimes these guys don't get to show what they can show. So I wouldn't be surprised if Maxey has a much better rookie year as a playmaker, but I still don't think he's great as a playmaker.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's how I see it too. But it's always hard to judge when you're getting either grenades or you're getting transition playmaking opportunities.
Right.
But
all right, so number 16, Cole Anthony, North Carolina point guard, was, I think, unanimously top 3 before the season started, and now finds himself at 16. Happily for me, played on one of the worst North Carolina teams ever, but really unfair to him too. That team was completely devoid of talent besides him and Garrison Brooks for the most part. He knows how to score. He's very athletic and strong and physical. He's a great rebounder for his size. I'll start by saying that. Awesome rebounder. honestly had some games where he led North Carolina in rebounds. And if you know anything about North Carolina, Garrison Brooks and Armando Bacot are two traditional bigs that can really rebound. So for Cole to compete with them on the defensive glass is impressive. Um, for me, questionable shot maker, taker, I guess, more than maker, because he can make some really difficult shots. And also a little bit of a lack of playmaker. Honestly, even worse than Maxi for me. I think he's much more of an ISO clear out one side and let me attack, as opposed to like traditional point guard. Let me get the ball and make a play for somebody else or make a play for myself. So definitely needs to improve as a facilitator. And defensively, he left a lot to be desired.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm about to
Defensively,
turn the
as
light on
long
so it doesn't look like I'm in a cave. So just keep talking.
there you go. There he is.
There
There's
we
someone
are.
talking. um, but yeah, defensively, he's got a long way to go. I think that's well known. Um, but as far as offensively goes, it scares me a little bit with the ball in his hand. He shows a lot of Dennis Smith Jr. Tendencies. He uses his athleticism to try to get to the rim, but Cole has a far better handle, able to use that to set up his shot and a far better jumper. So I don't think he'll have that career trajectory, but I do have some concerns with his decision making. I do like his size, his ability to get to the rim. His shot is there. Didn't shoot a great percentage because, like we said, it's just taking a lot of tough shots. I think he has a lot of time to develop. If he goes in and is the starting point guard for a bad team right away, I think his career is in jeopardy. It's not going to last too long. But I think if he goes somewhere where he can develop, learn behind some veterans, get some tutelage behind someone that's kind of had a similar beginning, he can do really well in the NBA. I think his fit is really imperative to see how he ends up playing. He's either going to have a long career that has all-star appearances, or he's going to be playing in China when he's 25. So I also saw a little bit of Austin Rivers in him, taking tough shots, trying
Much
to get
less
on
clutch.
highlights.
Much less clutch. But other than that, yeah.
It's hard to be hitting clutch shots when you're not in many games. So, um, but yeah, I think he's your prototypical need the ball in your hands to score. Not going to do much off ball. So it's all about fit for him. All the talent's there. He's definitely an NBA player. He's definitely a top 15 type player in this draft. But fit and desire to want to get better defensively, playmaking, and off ball, I think are the three main points for him.
Yeah, he was pretty polarizing last year. He either was like 4 for 20 with 7 turnovers or like near triple double with almost perfect numbers. So um, we need to find a middle ground for him, I think. And then his rookie year will go at least somewhat according to plan.
Yeah,
Uh,
please don't go to a lottery team. Just
so number 17, another one of my favorites, Sadiq Bey from Villanova. Um, first of all, Villanova, I feel like at least in the last 5 years, I would say, I've just been sending NBA ready guys into the pros. Doesn't necessarily mean superstars, but like guys that can contribute and just make a team better. And I think Sadiq Bey is another one of those guys. Um, Initially, I think he'll be a 3-and-D kind of player. He's long, not super athletic, and somewhat slow, so a little concerning there. But I think he's a really good shooter. I think he's a better scorer overall than people give him credit for. I think he can put the ball on the ground and make a few plays every now and again, but really just going to do everything correctly. Rebound for you, he'll defend, he'll give you effort, and knock down open shots. So at the 17 range, like just outside the lottery, I think it's perfect.
I think it's a home run if you get him there. To be honest, I think he's a Torrey Craig on defense. Not going to overwhelm you with getting into you, defending you 94 feet, using quickness to turn you 5 or 6 times before you get to half court. But he's going to use his length, his IQ. He's going to use his help defenders to get you so you can't get to your spots. I think he's a really, really smart defender. His steal and block rate isn't high, and a lot of people say that's a indicator that he's not going to be a good defender or a positive defender in the next level. But I think Villanova just sits back and defends you and makes you use all 30 seconds now, sorry, of the shot clock to make a tough shot. So I think he's a really, really good defender, and we'll show that from day one. Offensively, yeah, he's definitely slow, but he's absolutely able to run a pick and roll, kind of like a Denzel Valentine type of just going to be patient, get you on your back, get him on your back, make the right play. He's not going to turn the ball over a ton, and he's able to get good matchups on him. So if he has a guard on him, he's going to put them right in the block, and he can score over either shoulder. So I think he's just a really intelligent player. Never going to have huge numbers. I think someone like Chris Middleton is like a dream scenario for him, that type of player. But I think more or less he's going to be positive on both sides of the ball. Going to be a starter for a long time. And I think he should be definitely taking the lottery and probably in the top 10.
Yeah, and Villanova plays probably as close to an NBA type system as almost any other college team, in that they use a lot of high pick and roll and spread the court with shooters. And Sadiq, if he wasn't involved in the pick and roll directly, was spotting up and making over 45% last year from three. So obviously the 3-point line's moved out a little bit more, but I still think he's going to be a very capable knockdown shooter in the NBA at the very least. So he'll be a good fit for pretty much anybody. So number 18, first time I'm ever going to say this name out loud, Aleksej Pokusevski. Close enough. From Serbia.
We'll go with Poku from now on.
Yeah, you got this one.
No, just Poku for now.
What do you have on Poku?
So he's just every definition or every meaning of the definition of raw. I think he's 7 foot, very, very thin, very young. I think he's the youngest player in the draft, or at least one of the top 3. He's got a ton of skill. I think what I really like about him on offense is that he plays at his pace. So kind of like how Luka, Jokic, all those kind of typical Europeans that you look at them and like, how are they this effective? It's because they are able to dictate the pace they play at. He's not going to be burning up and down the court, although he's decent in transition. But he's really good at controlling the pace. Kind of like Bull, he's allergic to the paint on offense. Although he's 7 foot, he's going to be spreading the floor. Kind of an inconsistent shooter, but I think that comes with maturity. He doesn't have any red flags in his jump shot, so I think that'll develop just fine. Where he definitely needs some maturing is in his just body itself. So putting some muscle on. If he were to play tomorrow in the NBA, I don't think he would last more than 15 games before getting an injury. I think he's very frail and has a long way to go there. But he does make really well. Sees the floor really well for a 7-footer. And then defensively, he just has to get more disciplined. He really wants to come over and have that help side block. So a lot of times gets caught and over-helping and gives up an easy dunk or an easy 3. So he's just got some time to develop. I think he's someone that you draft, have him stay over one more year, give him a weightlifting plan, and have him come over and try to fit him into your plan. But I don't ever see him being a number 1 or number 2 offensive option. I think he's more of a Dario Saric type. He can be secondary playmaker from the forward spot. I don't know. He'll be on multiple teams, but he'll be effective for a little while.
Yeah, so just to put numbers behind what you were saying, he's not turning 19 until the end of the year, so obviously very young. 7 feet tall, 195 pounds, which is quite small.
Wow. I was kidding when I said he hasn't reached out 200 pounds yet, but
Yeah, small. And 7'3" wingspan. And honestly, as an 18-year-old right now, he's probably still growing, so he's going to need to put on weight even quicker than your 24-year-old that's 7 feet tall. Um, so definitely needs to get a lot bigger. I'm not going to add anything of substance because I'm far less knowledgeable internationally. But for me, that's very small, and that's like the biggest area of concern for me, just to last in the NBA. So I can now talk about someone I know a whole lot more about, which is number 19, Jalen Smith from Maryland. So Jalen also was very small when he was a freshman, got a lot bigger, put on a lot more weight, still has very little legs, but is stronger upper body wise. Became a pretty good shooter, especially his second year. He came in as supposed to be a good shooter with good touch and didn't shoot it too well his freshman year. Developed into a really good shooter his sophomore year. Um, Also developed into a pretty good defender his sophomore year. Blocked a lot of shots, got a lot of rebounds, and played very physical in the paint in the Big Ten, which is obviously known for physicality. Um, Became pretty comfortable with the ball in his hands, which was another thing that was opposite from his freshman year. So if anything with Jalen Smith, he shows that he can get better and will work to get better. I think his skill set is really fits well for the modern day NBA. He's a pick and pop four that can also catch on the block and put it on the ground, can occasionally make a play for somebody else. He did struggle a lot with doubles for the most part, didn't exactly make the best passes out of them, and felt mostly uncomfortable with his back to the basket. Did get more comfortable as the season went on and he got in more situations, but I don't know that he's going to have his back to the basket a ton in the NBA, so I guess that's not super concerning, but it would be nice to add another skill set like that. But for today's NBA, I think he'll be very effective. And the way he's been defending his second year at Maryland was impressive, so that'll help as well.
yeah. I mean, I was gonna start with saying, he's not gonna see in the NBA right away is doubles. So.
Especially,
Jalen Smith,
he'll
I think,
probably play for a coach that knows how to run an offense too. But we'll talk about that on a different podcast.
yeah, I was gonna bring that up, but I'm gonna leave it there. Anyway, he's someone that the more film I watch, the more I like him and think he's a top 5 talent in this draft for sure. He's 6'10", super long. I think he has the similar body type to like Anthony Davis, Mo Bamba, where they come in at super young, still growing like crazy, still in college, and then they start to fill out. You could see that from his freshman to sophomore year, and I think that's just going to continue. He's going to get a lot bigger, and like you said, banging in with the Big Ten bigs of like Caleb Wesson, Xavier Tillman, Purdue, Illinois. Those bigs are all they do is have their back to the basket. And he had Bruno his first year, Fernando now with the Hawks, but now this past year he didn't have that protection, so he had to take those assignments on.
And he didn't even have
So
a
he's
backup,
definitely,
so he couldn't even get in foul trouble. Like it was literally Jalen Smith or nobody. So
yeah. So he had to play smart, which he did. He's very good at the verticality. But offensively, I think he has the highest ceiling of any big. I think because of how him and I think Precious, but I think his just ability to shoot the ball, he looks super smooth. I mean, they ran stagger screens for him at Maryland, which you don't see for 4s or 5s
he was
ever.
honestly, besides Anthony Cowan, he was the best 3-point shooter for the majority of the season.
Absolutely, and it's just a smooth jumper now. I know freshman year it was very mechanic. He was very robotic when he was shooting the ball, but now it's super smooth, decently high release, not like over his head like that in Vassal, but it's a good spot. And being 6'10", he's going to be able to get that off no problem. Still has a lot to be desired about putting the ball on the floor, but I think that'll come. He's going to be really effective, I think, in short roll, off pick and rolls, where he can catch the ball and make a play. He's still learning that, but I think he'll definitely be effective there. But yeah, I think he's got a really high ceiling offensively. and will certainly be a positive defensive player. Sort of in the next few years, I think initially it'll be hard for him. He gets his feet wrong sometimes in some pick and roll coverage. Shows up late on drop coverages and pick and roll, so can get attacked and beat to the rim. But his length can make up for that in college. NBA, I think, is going to be a little bit different for him. So in the next 2 years, I think he's going to struggle a little bit defensively, but he'll certainly fix that, no problem. But yeah, I think 19 is way too low. I'd slide him in the top 10 just because his length, his offensive ceiling, and then his defensive potential.
And he wears goggles, and who can't root for a guy wearing goggles? All right.
Horace Grant.
So number 20, last one we're going to talk about in this podcast is Kyra Lewis from Alabama. I guess the first thing that comes to mind with Kyra is how fast he is. I mean, I don't think I haven't at least looked at the full court sprint stats yet from the combine, but I got to imagine he was up there. He is very shifty, very quick. At least like taking away the basketball, he reminds me of De'Aaron Fox with how fast he is and how agile he is running and just moving around. With that being said, offensively, he was a little inconsistent and inefficient. Alabama's tough because they take some weird shots, and it's just a weird offensive team in general. So you kind of have to parse together some things for them. But he's very young too. I think he was the youngest freshman of his class, and now he's even going to be a young member of this class, even with college experience. So I think he will need to improve at least efficiency-wise on the offensive end. But very quick, very agile, and should be a good defender, at least initially. Just with his speed, he has to obviously learn how to play defense. He kind of relies on his raw athleticism more so than like understanding defense as a whole. But another thing that I would like to see him do is just figure out how to finish around the rim a little bit better, because I think he's pretty good at going by people, but then he kind of becomes a mess when he gets around the rim. And obviously that's going to get even harder for him in the NBA.
Yeah, I think finishing around the rim is he's still trying to figure out one, pick and roll coverages, but how to finish. So his freshman year, he just would try to get downhill as fast as he can and would run over people all the time, get a lot of charges. So that's where I think a lot of his turnovers came from. Sophomore year, he started working on Euro step or some sort of slow down step, something that dropped the pace down considerably, so he stopped having so many charges. But I think that affected his finishing ability. He also isn't super confident in his mid-range game. You'll see him sometimes pull from the free throw line with a floater rather than just pulling up for a regular jump shot. So I think if he's able to get downhill, pull up from 10, 15 feet, and knock down a mid-range jump shot, that'll help his finishing at the rim. Because right now, bigs just drop heavy, get down to the paint, set up, make him try to get around him or take a charge. So, and he's got to start hitting that jump shot when they go under screens. The guard goes under the screen. At least make them think that you're going to take it. Didn't take it a ton, but he was able to knock down a little bit. He's got a super slow release on his jump shot, so makes it a little challenging. Someone can get under and still recover and contest. But overall, I think he's got a ton of potential. Like you said, lightning quick. You kind of think of De'Aaron Fox, John Morant type of transition. And I think he can certainly get to their levels. But it's going to take some time. He's going to have to develop. I think he's someone that's going to benefit from the G League because of how physical it is. And he can work on reading coverages. If he's getting iced and forced sideline, how does he get downhill? If he's in rhythm, he can knock down a mid-range jump shot, but it's taking him time to read, and you can see when he thinks he can't get around him, if he's not thinking, he's going to go and put his head down and get a charge. So just got some time to develop. I wouldn't expect him to do anything too crazy next year as a rookie. Just give him a couple of years, and I think he'll be definitely a starting point guard. But we'll just need some time to develop.
All right. So like we did last time, this one's a little bit tougher because I don't really feel like anyone that we talked about shouldn't be in this range. I guess maybe Poku from what you've said, but and I think you could make an argument that Kyra might be a little high, but with how young he is and how much experience he has already at the college level, it's tough to slide him out of there. So anybody you would move out?
Yeah, I'd probably move on Poku and probably bring in Tyler Bay. But something I was thinking about if we were to play a 5v5 game, 10 players, one team gets 1 through 10, the other team gets 11 through 20. Who wins? So I guess the first 10 starting lineup, I would say, would be Halliburton, Anthony Edwards,
Okoro,
Wiseman, Okowu, Onyeka, Okowu,
and then Isaac Okoro playing the three, maybe.
or the three, yeah. So that
Or,
would go
or would you have
against
Denny in there?
what?
Would you have Denny in there instead of Okoro? Get another
No, I'd probably have
playmaker?
Okora.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that would go against. Let's see,
RJ,
point.
probably RJ and Maxi in the backcourt, right?
Yeah, so we really need playmakers in the front court.
Sadiq Bey, Jalen Smith, and Precious. Yikes.
It's like the Nuggets preseason of the bubbles lineup.
Your guard choices are Hampton, Maxi, Cole Anthony, and
Cole
Kyra.
Anthony and Kyra.
I'm not really crazy
Yeah,
about any of those guys making plays for other people.
not the best playmakers. Yeah, so
Sadiq Bey might be your best playmaker in that lineup.
yeah, he'd probably play point with RJ and Precious playing 2 and 3, and then who do you have? Jalen and who?
Jalen and Precious, I think I would put probably Chua.
Well, Jalen Precious and who was the third? So
Sadiq Bey, Tyrese Maxey, and RJ Hampton.
oh, Maxi. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about him.
So I think the first five of the top 10 is better, but like once you add the bench and stuff, I think the as a team overall, the next 10 would be better.
Yeah, I think it'd be really close.
Because I mean,
Um,
the other team off the bench, you're bringing in like Melo, Obi Toppin, Patrick Williams, Killian Hayes, and Denny.
yeah, not gonna do that. And then the other team, I mean, you got a lot better off the
You'd have
bench.
Devin Vassell, Aaron Neesmith, Poku.
Oh, I'd probably start Neesmith. I think at
over
3.
over who though? Because then you take out Sadiq Bey.
No, I wouldn't take out Sadiq.
Over
Um,
Maxi and just go massive.
well, I think they just need more shooting.
It would be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, no, it would be a fun matchup though, because it's just size and length versus potential.
Exactly. um, so you said Tyler Bay. I'll tell you this right now: there's not 20 players in this draft that are going to have a better career than Vernon Carey, and I don't care what anybody says, but I refuse to believe it.
Oh, you're definitely dying on that hill, but no,
I will go to war for Vernon Carey, just like I have for Jahlil Okafor, which hasn't gone great so far, but I still think he's one of the best post players in the NBA. Vernon Carey on this list is 43rd, and that's absolutely mind-boggling to me because he's so much better than that. And I also think that, I mean, we haven't had a ton of point guards in here, really. I guess we have had a fair amount, but Trey Jones I wouldn't put him in top 20, but he's a first-round pick as well. So, yeah, those are my homer picks.
yeah, homer picks for sure. But no, I agree. I think they're going to be, especially after seeing Vernon Carey, what he's done in the off season, shedding 30 pounds and looking really, really good. Yeah, but other than that, Tyler Bay, I mean,
That was going to be my third one, but since you already said him, I gave him to you.
I don't think there's anyone else that would really have top 20 consideration. Because I think, 21 is who? You have
Josh
it up.
Green.
Yeah, it's another guy that had a lot of hype coming into from high school.
Uh, Sorry. Yeah, Josh Green, Leandro Barmero, Jaden McDaniels, Theo Maladon, and Nico Mannion round out the next five.
The next five. Yeah, Jaden McDaniels, he's another potential guy. We'll talk about them next one.
Yep.
But yeah, so did you have more time to think about your top 10 now?
What do you mean?
Who your top 10 would be now that we've gone through 20?
Oh, so to take out of the people that we talked about last podcast, I would take out Melo. I'd take out Obi Toppin. I would take out
No,
Patrick.
let's go through. Let's go
Pick
1
by
through
pick?
10.
Who
Yeah.
you got first or second?
No. We'll make a consensus one.
All right. Anthony Edwards and James Wiseman.
1, 2,
Halliburton.
3. Halliburton 3. Yeah, I think that's our
And
consensus
then
top 3.
Onyeka Okongwu was
Onyeka
before.
4. 5 is where we.
Yeah, this is where it gets tough.
This is where we make our money.
Yikes. Would you put RJ?
So
I don't know if I'd put RJ that high.
So this is who I'm considering this high. So Precious, RJ, Jalen, to be honest.
Okoro or no?
Sadiq Bey, Okoro.
I don't like any of them. Can we decide on Vernon Carey and then we'll go to the 6?
No, I'll not go. Vernon Carey 5. Yeah, this one's hard.
It's bad. After 4, it's bad.
After 4, it's a big gap. We'll preface it with that. And I say we put Okoro there.
Okay.
Because his proven ability to play both sides of the floor, and he has a lot of potential. So he's 5, 6.
How do we feel about
like
Denny and Killian Hayes ahead of those guys you just mentioned? Okay.
Killian Hayes is so dominant left-handed that he has a long way to go. Very turnover prone, so incredible passer. I think, to be honest, he's a more effective passer than LaMelo Ball. But yeah, and then Denny at 7 or 6. We're at 6, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I just
get
feel like
worried
the people we're considering have a lot of questions too. So like, it's hard to move. Like for me, it's hard to bring Jalen Smith from like 4th, I guess 3rd best big all the way into like the top 6.
But you can take the 8th ranked center and put him at 5.
Yes, because Vernon Carey is better than Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith might trip going up the stage at draft night and be out for a little while. That's why his nickname is Sticks, because he literally walks on sticks.
Yeah. Well, so does Tyson Chandler, and he had a good career.
No, that's not even close to the same. Jalen Smith is smaller than that. All right, so Denny at 6.
7.
What about
I like RJ.
7?
Precious at 7, fine. Then RJ at 8.
RJ at 8, that works. I mean, I'm fine with Jalen Smith at 9.
Smith at 9 and Sadiq Bey at 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Who does that leave out?
Maxey,
wait, no, we said Tyrese.
Maxey, Anthony, Neesmith. Obviously, the people on the top 10 like Melo, Obi that we kicked out, Patrick Williams, Devin Vassell. That's really it.
Where do you land on Melo? What number?
Like, where would I pick him, or how good do I think he is? Because those are really different things. Because where would I pick him is probably never. But like in terms of talent, I mean, he's young. I would say like 12 or 13, I think, in this class.
Yeah.
Like
that's kind of where I'm landing too.
I feel like if this was last year's draft, he would not be a first round pick.
No. Maybe. But I wouldn't feel good about it
Yeah.
either way. Yeah, I think that's a solid 10. So yeah, Ant,
All right, so it goes,
Wiseman,
yeah, Anthony Edwards, Wiseman, Halliburton, Onyeka Okonkwo, Isaac Okoro, who do we put after Okoro? Precious? No, Denny.
Denny,
Then Precious,
Precious,
then RJ,
then RJ,
uh, Jalen, and
then Sadiq Bey.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I think that makes more sense. Those guys will definitely be instant impact. Maybe outside of Denny, just because these guys have time to develop. But yeah,
And I
I
think
can live with that.
the other two you would think about, at least for me, would be Maxi and probably Neesmith.
Maxie Neesmith, yeah, maybe Devin.
I'm really not crazy about him, so.
Yeah, and then Patrick Williams is somewhere around there too. But yeah, I definitely don't think that Patrick Williams is the best wing. They're second best because of Okoro. But
yeah.
Anyway, we'll round out the first round. We'll do a mock first round draft next time, and then that should get us to probably the draft. And then once the draft is there, we'll be able to go into more detail on what we think predictions for these rookies' futures.
And as of right now, we're hoping to do a YouTube live for the draft, so you get some live reactions, and we can be very dramatic when tragic things happen.
When LaMelo slips out of the lottery.
I mean, I was thinking more like Vernon Carey and Trey Jones don't go first round, and I'm leaving, but
yeah.
So that's the plan right now. So we'll finish the first round, do our mock drafts. Probably by that time, have to do some free agency stuff, and then there's a lot to talk
Season's
about.
Here. Yeah, it's either gonna be a very busy free agency or nothing.
I think it's busy
happen.
free agency in the sense that there'll be a lot of trades during free agency as opposed to people being signed.
Yeah, that's the only way people will be able to improve through the trade market, I think.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get there in a week or two.
Sounds good.
You got anything else? We're good to go.
Next episode, stay with us.